North Baltimore, Ohio. On this quiet afternoon, if you're fascinated by untold mysteries and chilling truths, hit subscribe. We're just getting started. 23-year-old Jonathan J. Baker changed everything. He grabbed his ex-girlfriend's 7-month-old baby and took off, angry, armed, and on the edge. He tore down the streets in a wild, dangerous chase that ended in blood and horror. What happened to that innocent baby? Hold on, because what you're about to hear will shake you to the core. Jonathan wasn't some stranger in the night. People knew him, or at least thought they did. He was the kind of guy you'd see around town, the familiar face you might pass by in the grocery store or at the gas station. You know the type, the one you wouldn't give a second thought, assuming he's just another young guy trying to get by. But behind those eyes, there was something else entirely. Beneath that familiar face was a darkness most people would never even guess. And it wasn't just any darkness. It was something truly sinister, something simmering beneath the surface, waiting to explode. He'd been seeing his ex-girlfriend and their relationship. It was toxic. It was the kind of breakup that leaves scars, raw and jagged. People knew they had their issues, but no one could have predicted the horror that was about to unfold. That day, as if things weren't already strained enough, Jonathan allegedly tells his ex that he's feeling homicidal and suicidal. Now imagine him standing there, maybe calm, maybe looking her dead in the eyes, casually mentioning he's got murder on his mind. He wasn't just threatening her, he was hinting at something far worse. And he makes it even clearer, yes, he's not talking about anyone. He's talking about her baby. Exactly. Her little one. Her 7-month-old innocent life was caught in the crossfire of his twisted intentions. A child who'd never wronged anyone had no idea what danger was lurking just a few feet away. Do you feel those chills creeping up your spine yet? Now think about the terror his ex felt. That feeling when someone you once trusted starts looking at you like a stranger. And not just any stranger, a predator. Maybe she thought just for a second that he was trying to scare her, that these were empty threats. But then again, can you risk it when someone is looking at you with that kind of twisted determination? She wasn't about to gamble with her child's life. So, with her heart pounding and her mind racing, she dials 911. Her voice probably trembling, words spilling out as she tries to explain the nightmare unfolding before her eyes. Her ex has her baby, he's armed, and he's not in his right mind. She's terrified, desperate. The bolo goes out, and the officers are alerted. They're told to watch out for a man in a yellow Camaro, armed, dangerous, and on the run with an innocent child. Every officer on duty knows this isn't just another chase. There's something deeply wrong here. They can feel it in the air. This isn't just another case. This is a life-or-death situation. They need to find him, fast. And while they're mobilizing, Baker's already out there, cruising down the road with the baby girl strapped in the back seat, like it's just another drive. But this isn't a Sunday afternoon drive, not even close. Maybe he's muttering to himself, his eyes dark, hands gripping the wheel a little too tight, or that he's dead silent, lost in his twisted world. Whatever's going on in his head, one thing's certain, it's far from sane. And that car, that yellow Camaro, it's about to become a vehicle of terror, a symbol of the nightmare that North Baltimore will never forget. This wasn't a random act of rage. It was something worse, something premeditated, cold, calculated. It was a drive into darkness, a plunge into the deepest corners of the human psyche, where reason doesn't exist, only chaos and destruction. Chasing the Camaro. Now here's where things get wild. And that bolo is not just a casual, look out for this guy. Every cop within miles is on edge, scanning the roads, ready for any sign of Baker's yellow Camaro. And it doesn't take long before someone spots him. An off-duty officer, out on his own time, catches sight of that telltale yellow car. The guy's heart must have skipped a beat, realizing he was looking right at the man everyone was hunting for. The officer doesn't wait. He falls right in behind Baker, keeping his distance, watching him like a hawk, and calling in for backup. And as he follows, Baker's pace picks up. The Camaro starts speeding up, engine roaring, tires screeching against the pavement. It's like he knows. He knows they're onto him, and he's not about to make it easy. So the scenes like Baker's Camaro, bright yellow and roaring like a beast, tearing through the streets of North Baltimore like it's on a warpath. The speed, the intensity, it's like he's got nothing left to lose. and that car's just a weapon in his hands. The neighborhood? Silent, unaware. People going about their day, kids playing in yards, families relaxing in their homes. No one expects a monster to come hurtling down their street. But then, it happens. The Camaro screeches down the street, a blur of yellow rage tearing through the calm of the neighborhood. With each turn, Baker seems more unhinged, swerving dangerously close to parked cars, mailboxes, and even pedestrians who barely leap out of the way in time. The cops are relentless, lights flashing, sirens wailing, but Baker shows no signs of slowing. He barrels through an intersection, ignoring the red light, and narrowly avoids a head-on collision with a minivan. The air is thick with tension as the officers strategize over their radios, trying to predict his next move. But Baker isn't predictable. He's chaos incarnate, taking turns that make no sense, doubling back, and weaving through alleys in a desperate bid to shake his pursuers. The chase is like a powder keg about to explode, and then it does. Baker accelerates again, pushing the Camaro to its limits, the engine screaming in protest. He veers off the main road, cutting through a small park, the tires kicking up dirt and grass as he plows through a wooden fence. And just as the officers close in, sirens deafening, Baker makes his most reckless move yet, a hard turn that sends the Camaro careening toward the residential area, heading straight for disaster. There's this horrific, tense silence as the officers approach. You can hear the click of their guns, the faint murmur of police radios, and then they see her. Through the cracked, shattered back window, they could see a glimpse of the baby. Bloodied, barely moving, strapped into her car seat. It's a sight that makes even the toughest officers falter for a moment. This wasn't just any child. This was an innocent, ripped from her mother's arms and thrown into a nightmare. They snap into action. One officer smashes the car window, reaching in to unlock the door. The car reeks of gasoline, of burnt rubber, of something far worse, a stench that hints at the violence and horror of what just happened. Hands reach in, pulling the baby out as gently as they can, cradling her fragile, broken body. They call for EMTs, their voices laced with urgency, with fear. They know they're running out of time. And Jonathan? He's slumped over in the driver's seat, dazed, blood running down his face from the impact, but very much alive. It's as if fate itself refused to take him yet. He sits there, barely conscious, while the officers wrestle him out of the driver's seat. And the look in his eyes? Cold, detached, like he doesn't even realize the carnage he's left behind. Meanwhile, the baby girl is rushed to the waiting ambulance, her tiny form so still it's almost unbearable. Neighbors look on in horror, some covering their mouths, some unable to hold back tears. This wasn't just another car crash, of course. It was a scene straight out of a nightmare, one that would haunt them for years to come. One of the neighbors, Jason Miller, watches from a distance, frozen, unable to tear his eyes away. He sees the officers rushing, sees the baby being lifted out, and sees the EMTs fighting to keep her alive. He'd later say it took almost an hour and a half to get Baker out of that car, to pull his sorry self from the wreckage he caused. As for that little girl, she's rushed to the hospital, lights flashing, sirens screaming, everyone praying that maybe, just maybe, she'll make it. But deep down, there's a gut-wrenching feeling in every officer's chest. They know this scene, having seen it before, and know how it ends all too often. The drive to the hospital must have felt like a lifetime. Every bump in the road, every twist and turn, a painful reminder of the fragile life hanging by a thread. But when they finally reach those hospital doors, the doctors and nurses rush out. There's no comfort, no relief. A baby's final moments. Time is not lost. They hurry to work as soon as she is brought into their care, laying her down on the stretcher carefully. This minuscule body, bruised and bloodied, lies there so still, so fragile, and it's these EMTs who are fighting with everything they've got. And sure, of course, they've seen a lot, but this is different. This is a baby, an innocent who hasn't asked for all of this. EMTs are a whirlwind of action, hands flying over her in search of the signs of life, doing everything within their power to stabilize her. Voices are churning, orders called out, all in some last gasp effort to cling to whatever hope may still linger. And all through this, the neighborhood watches, their hearts breaking as they realize just how serious this is. As they speed to the hospital, sirens blaring, lights flashing, every bump of the road feels like a blow. Medics inside the ambulance are fighting a losing battle. They are pushing everything to the edge, using every tool they have, but at heart, they know the truth. The damage is too great and injuries too severe, yet they won't stop, not for 1 second. They work with a ferocity that only arrives when you're trying to rescue someone who shouldn't ever have been put in harm's way at all. And then, they arrive at the hospital. The nurses and doctors stand in line, already bracing for the worst. They are to take over in this last-ditch attempt at keeping her alive. Medics hand her over. Their eyes lock into the nurses with a silent understanding of what they're dealing with. They have given it their all. It's now up to the hospital team to continue the battle. Officers wait in the waiting room, grim faces, jaws set. These men and women have seen the worst of humans, yet this is something else. Some of them look at each other. Exchanging glances means more than any words. They are shaken, visibly. Some men and women have kids of their own. Some cannot help but think of their own families as they wait to hear the news of the havoc wreaked, wondering how something so wicked could happen in their backyard. Meanwhile, doctors toil in vain, desperately trying to stabilize her, checking on her essentials, administering medication, trying every last trick in the book. Outside are officers, neighbors, and an entire town that holds their breath, holding onto a thread of hope and hoping she gets through this somehow. But after what seemed like an eternity, the doctor finally comes out from the trauma room with his face drawn in a frown of sorrow. He walks over to the waiting officers. His entire face says it all without even needing his words. She didn't make it. She's gone. The officers were dumbfounded. They didn't utter a word. They milled in what had just happened. They bow their heads, some swallowing tears, others gripping fists tightly closed into gutted silence. And the town? North Baltimore would be quite altered. The watchers who had seen it all, EMTs fought to save her, officers followed Baker. Each one would carry this horror in their hearts, a permanent marking etched into their memory. And as for Jonathan J. Baker, he'd go to trial and face his charges, but nothing in the courtroom could ever suffice as punishment. No sentence ever could erase the pain he had enacted, the innocence he had stolen, and for that town, that tiny little community where everyone felt like they knew their neighbors, the shadows of that day would linger, reminding them all forever that monsters sometimes wear familiar faces. The aftermath. As the news of the little girl's passing rippled through North Baltimore, a heavy, almost tangible darkness settled over the town. The kind of darkness that sinks into every corner, lingers in every conversation, every tear-streaked face. For the residents, this wasn't just the loss of an innocent life. It was the shattering of their sense of safety, a reminder that evil can strike anywhere, even here, in the heart of their peaceful community. The police who had chased Baker down, who had watched helplessly as the baby slipped away, were left haunted by the tragedy. You could see it in their faces, the exhaustion, the weight they now carried. The investigators dug deep, looking for answers, for the slightest clue as to why Baker had done this, why he'd taken an innocent child and brought her into his twisted path of destruction. The entire town demanded answers, but what they found only made it worse. Baker's eerie calm, his complete lack of remorse, as if the horror he'd inflicted was nothing more than a footnote in his mind. Questions buzzed through North Baltimore, unanswered and painful. How could anyone harbor such darkness? How did no one see this coming? Families who once let their kids play in the street were now clutching them close, peeking out windows, wondering if they knew their neighbors. There was no way to bring back the little girl, no way to undo the heartbreak, and for that, the community felt an anger, a sorrow so deep it threatened to swallow them whole. And as the investigation pressed on, so did the mourning. The town came together to honor the girl's memory, to grieve as one, and to search for solace in a senseless tragedy. They knew they'd never forget her, that her face would forever haunt the walls of their minds, a reminder of innocence stolen and trust forever broken. This tragedy is going to haunt North Baltimore for years to come, because sometimes the real horror isn't in a ghost or a shadow, it's in the people we thought we knew. And it leaves behind a scar that no amount of time can heal. If this story has you on edge, drop a comment and let us know what you think. This case is closed, but there are more stories waiting. Subscribe to uncover them. Ever heard of the TikTok killer? A case so twisted it'll leave you speechless. Uncover the chilling details. Watch now.